Napoleon Bonaparte enters European history at a moment when old certainties are collapsing. The French Revolution has broken the political order of the continent's most populous kingdom, toppled a monarchy that claimed divine sanction, and unleashed a new kind of warfare, one powered not only by dynastic rivalry, but by ideology, mass conscription, and the promise that a nation could be remade from the ground up. Out of that turbulence steps a young artillery officer from a Mediterranean island on the edge of France's cultural map, and within a decade he will be treating emperors and kings as pieces on a board. He is born in 1769 in Ajaccio, Corsica, just after France has taken the island from Genoa. His family is minor nobility, respectable but not rich, and Napoleon grows up with a sharpened sense of being both insider and outsider, Corsican by upbringing, French by opportunity, and always conscious of status. He is sent to military schools on the mainland, where his accent and modest means mark him out, but where his talent, especially for mathematics and the technical demands of artillery, gives him a path forward. The revolution, erupting in 1789, transforms that path into a highway. In the old army, promotion was slow and often aristocratic. In the Revolutionary Army, ability and political reliability can accelerate a career at breathtaking speed. Napoleon's first great break comes at Toulon in 1793. The port has rebelled against the revolutionary government and invited British support. Napoleon, still in his early 20s, proposes a plan grounded in artillery logic. Seize the high ground that commands the harbor, force the British fleet to withdraw, and the city will fall. The plan works. Toulon makes his name and, just as importantly, demonstrates a recurring theme of his career. He wins by seeing the battlefield as a system, terrain, logistics, morale, timing, and then applying force at the decisive point. 2 years later, in October 1795, Paris is threatened by a royalist uprising. The revolutionary government turns to the young general who has already shown he can act decisively. Napoleon's response is brutally effective. He uses cannon loaded with grape shot to disperse the insurgents. It is not a romantic episode, but it is revealing. Napoleon will repeatedly present himself as the guardian of order in a world that fears chaos as much as it hopes for liberty. That reputation opens the door to command in Italy, where he is sent in 1796 at the head of an army that is underfunded, underfed, and underestimated. The Italian campaign is where Napoleon becomes Napoleon. He moves faster than opponents expect, separates allied armies, defeats them in sequence, and lives off the land with a ruthless efficiency that keeps his soldiers moving. Battles like Lodi, Arcole, and Rivoli are not simply victories. They are performances that he narrates back to France through proclamations, bulletins, and a carefully managed image of youthful genius. He negotiates as boldly as he fights, extracting concessions and art from Italian states, weakening Austria, and returning to France not only as a successful commander, but as a political figure with immense prestige. In 1798, he turns toward Egypt, a campaign that reveals both ambition and limitation. Strategically, it aims to threaten British routes to India and to plant French influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. Culturally, it carries scholars and scientists alongside soldiers, producing the monumental Description de l'Égypte and helping spark European Egyptology. Militarily, Napoleon wins on land, famously at the Battle of the Pyramids, but his fleet is destroyed by Admiral Nelson at the Nile, cutting him off. The campaign becomes a paradox, a triumph of propaganda and scholarship shadowed by strategic failure. Yet even this can be turned to advantage. Napoleon leaves his army behind, slips back to France, and arrives at a moment when the revolutionary government, the Directory, is discredited and unstable. The coup of 18 Brumaire in November 1799 ends the Directory and installs Napoleon as first consul. It is often described as the moment the revolution ends and a new authoritarian order begins. But the reality is more complex. Napoleon does not restore the Ancien Regime. He consolidates many revolutionary changes while curbing political freedom. He centralizes administration, appoints prefects to govern departments, and builds a state that can mobilize resources with unprecedented efficiency. He makes peace with the Catholic Church through the Concordat of 1801, recognizing Catholicism as the religion of most French citizens while keeping the Church subordinate to the state. It is a bargain designed to heal a nation fractured by religious conflict and revolutionary anti-clericalism. His most enduring domestic achievement is the Napoleonic Code, promulgated in 1804. It standardizes laws across France, secures equality before the law for men, protects property rights, and enshrines the secular authority of the state. It also reinforces patriarchal power, restricting women's rights and strengthening the legal authority of husbands and fathers. The Code is both modern and limiting, a rational, uniform legal framework that spreads across Europe with Napoleon's armies, leaving a legacy that outlasts his empire, while also reflecting the gender and social assumptions of its era. In 1804, Napoleon crowns himself Emperor of the French. The symbolism matters. He is not crowned by divine right through a church ritual that places him under clerical authority. He takes the crown and places it on his own head, asserting that legitimacy comes from his achievements and the nation's will as he interprets it. The revolution's language of citizenship and merit is repurposed to serve a new dynasty. War, however, is the engine of his regime. The Napoleonic Wars are not a single conflict, but a series of shifting coalitions as Britain, Austria, Russia, Prussia, and others attempt to contain French power. Napoleon's military system is formidable. Corps that can march separately and fight together, rapid concentration of force, and a preference for decisive battles that shatter enemy armies. In 1805, when Britain remains undefeated at sea after Trafalgar, Napoleon turns on Austria and Russia on land. At Austerlitz, often called his greatest victory, he lures the Allies into attacking what looks like a weak French position, then strikes through the center and collapses their line. The battle is a masterpiece of timing and deception, and it remakes the map of Central Europe. He follows with victories over Prussia at Jena-Auerstedt in 1806 and pushes into Poland, fighting Russia to a bloody draw at Eylau before winning at Friedland in 1807. The meeting with Tsar Alexander I at Tilsit produces an uneasy partnership, the kind of peace that rests on mutual calculation rather than trust. Napoleon reshapes Germany through the Confederation of the Rhine and dissolves the Holy Roman Empire, an institution that had endured in name for a millennium. He places siblings and loyalists on thrones, Joseph in Spain, Louis in Holland, Jerome in Westphalia, attempting to build a family-based system of allied states. Yet the empire carries within it the seeds of resistance. Napoleon's continental system, designed to economically strangle Britain by closing European ports to British goods, becomes a source of resentment and smuggling. It pressures allies and conquered territories alike, forcing them to choose between economic pain and political obedience. Spain becomes the bleeding wound. In 1808, Napoleon intervenes in Iberian politics, deposes the Spanish Bourbon king, and installs his brother. The result is not stability, but a national uprising and a brutal guerrilla war, one of the first modern examples of a population-wide insurgency against an occupying army. British forces under the Duke of Wellington exploit the conflict, and the Peninsular War drains French manpower and prestige. It is also a war of atrocities, reprisals, and civilian suffering, and it shows that Napoleon's style of warfare, fast, decisive, battle-centric, struggles against an enemy that refuses to fight on his terms. The turning point comes with Russia. By 1812, the alliance with Alexander has frayed, partly over the continental system and partly over Napoleon's growing dominance in Europe. Napoleon assembles the Grande Armée, an enormous multinational force, and invades Russia. The scale is staggering. Hundreds of thousands of men, horses, wagons, and guns moving across vast distances. The Russian strategy is equally consequential. Retreat, scorch supplies, avoid encirclement, and let space and time do their work. Napoleon reaches Moscow after the bloody Battle of Borodino, only to find the city largely abandoned and soon engulfed by fires. He waits for peace offers that do not come. Winter approaches. The retreat becomes catastrophe: hunger, cold, disease, and relentless Russian attacks. The image of the Grande Armée dissolving into a frozen, starving column becomes one of the defining scenes of European memory. From that disaster, Napoleon's enemies sense opportunity. Prussia, Austria, Russia, and others form a new coalition. Napoleon fights with remarkable energy in 1813, but he is outnumbered, and at Leipzig, the Battle of the Nations, his forces are defeated. In 1814, the Allies enter Paris. Napoleon abdicates and is exiled to Elba, a small island where he is granted a title and a miniature court. It looks like the end. But Napoleon's story has one more act, and it is as theatrical as it is political. In 1815, he escapes Elba and returns to France. Soldiers sent to arrest him join him instead. The Bourbon monarchy collapses without a major battle. For 100 days, Napoleon attempts to rebuild his regime, offering constitutional reforms and presenting himself as the defender of the nation against foreign domination. The European powers respond with speed. The final campaign culminates at Waterloo in June 1815. Napoleon fights Wellington and the Prussians under Blucher. Confusion, mud, delayed attacks, and the arrival of Prussian reinforcements turn the battle against him. Waterloo is not merely a defeat. It is a closing of possibilities. Napoleon abdicates again and is exiled far more securely to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic, where he will die in 1821. Exile becomes a workshop for legend. On St. Helena, Napoleon dictates memoir-like reflections, shaping how posterity will understand him. A man of destiny betrayed by circumstance, a modernizer opposed by reactionary monarchs, a genius undone by fate. This self-portrait is powerful, and it competes with another image, Napoleon as tyrant, warmonger, and usurper whose wars killed millions and destabilized a continent. Both contain truth, and the tension between them is part of his enduring fascination. His impact on Europe is concrete. Administratively, he spreads centralized government, legal uniformity, and merit-based institutions in many territories under French control. In some places, he accelerates the end of feudal privileges and strengthens a middle-class order built around property and bureaucracy. Nationalism, too, grows in his shadow. Resistance to French domination helps catalyze national feeling in Spain, Germany, and elsewhere. The very act of reorganizing Europe, redrawing borders, creating client states, and toppling old structures provokes questions about identity and sovereignty that will shape the 19th century. His wars also transform military practice. Mass conscription, operational mobility, corps organization, and the integration of politics with war become hallmarks of modern conflict. European states learn from him, then learn how to defeat him through coalition warfare, strategic depth, and the willingness to sustain long campaigns rather than seek a single decisive battle. After his fall, the Congress of Vienna attempts to restore balance and prevent another continent-spanning empire. Yet even that restoration is haunted by the Revolutionary and Napoleonic era. The desire for order confronts the spread of liberalism and nationalism that Napoleon both restrained and inadvertently advanced. There are lesser-known details that sharpen the portrait. Napoleon's relationship with propaganda is unusually modern. He understands that bulletins, portraits, and symbols can be as influential as cannon. His regime creates the Legion of Honor to reward service and bind elites to the state. He sells Louisiana to the United States in 1803, a decision shaped by the failure to secure Saint-Domingue, Haiti, after a revolution led by enslaved people defeats French attempts to reimpose control. That failure, and Napoleon's decision to restore slavery in some French colonies in 1802, are essential parts of his record, reminding us that the language of revolution and the realities of empire often collided in brutal ways. Modern relevance lies in the institutions and arguments his life still provokes. Legal codes influenced by the Napoleonic model remain foundational in many countries. Debates about strong executive power, technocratic administration, and the trade-offs between stability and liberty echo the choices of his era. His career also serves as a case study in how military success can translate into political authority, and how the same mechanisms that build an empire can overextend it. Napoleon's legend persists because it offers no simple moral. It is the story of a man who harnessed revolution to create order, who used war to build a state, who carried reform across Europe while imposing domination, and who left behind both a blueprint for modern governance and a warning about the costs of ambition when it outruns restraint. In the end, Napoleon is not only a figure of battles and crowns. He is a hinge in history, standing between the world of hereditary monarchies and the modern state, between the politics of court intrigue and the politics of mass mobilization. His life compresses the possibilities and perils of a new age into a single extraordinary arc, one that still shapes how Europe remembers power, law, and the price of remaking a continent by force.